everybody, and welcome to Being Black in Britain, the podcast that captures the nature and the essence of the Black experience. My name is Chiedza, I am your host, and I'm here today joined with Udy Archibong, Pro Vice-Chancellor at the University of Bradford, Director of EDI, a trailblazer in the field with decades of experience in the health and the education sector. We'll be discussing all things pertaining to representation, equality, diversity, inclusion, and what it really looks like to present authentically in the world of work, particularly as Black women navigating predominantly white spaces. Stay tuned. Hope you enjoy it. Let's go. So first and foremost then, Udy, could you just introduce yourself? What do you do? Who are you?
Hi, my name is Professor Udy Archibong. I am Pro Vice-Chancellor, Equality, Diversity and Inclusion at the University of Bradford. I direct the Center for Inclusion and Diversity, and I have approval strategic oversight for everything equality, diversity and inclusion across the institution.
Lovely, thank you. And I guess my first question, which is a bit of a provocative question, is for the person that says there is no more need for EDI because we already know what the situation is. We all know what a microaggression is. We know what unconscious bias is. It's enough. How do you respond to such a person that suggests that they are tired of hearing it?
I guess my first question will be very challenging, which is about, okay, there goes our humanity then. Maybe we shouldn't be even thinking about humanity, human beings at all. And I think there's something about us falsifying the reality of life by thinking that we are in a post-racial, racism, post-sexism, discrimination era. I think it's all false. Sometimes I just enjoy watching the news just to count how many issues related to diversity, inclusion, and social justice, human rights, and so on happens around us globally. And I kid you not, if there was any news session that you didn't have at least about 5 to 10 pieces of things around diversity, then there's something wrong. I guess that is an indication about the world. Can you really separate the issues that we're talking about from the very essence of humanity? And my response is no, because I think to be the humans that we are, we need to be in a place where we feel we belong. To be able to thrive, and that's when we can be significant, and that's when we can make a difference in our world. So I guess my short answer to this is, please, can we stop falsifying this? We are not in a post-racial, post-racism era. It's here with us every day, and sometimes I'm challenged to think, is it getting subtler? Sometimes I think, yes, it is. But most times I'm thinking, it's really in your face. Most of the time it's in your face. So my humble view is, please, let's not lie to ourselves. If we had cracked it, we wouldn't be in a place where I still feel that for about 21 to 23,000 professors in the UK, only 35 to maximum 38, 40 are Black women. I mean, what else do you want? That is just that you have a group of people that if anything happened and struck 8 of them, then you've lost that species completely in the UK higher education system.
Indeed. And thinking back to sort of May 2020 to this point that we are now, to the person that says, yeah, the UK has made lots of progress. You know, we're doing well since George Floyd. You know, we've learned, we've acknowledged, we've moved, we've made progress. For the person that's patting themselves on the back, how do you respond to that?
I don't think we're doing well, though. I guess the test for me was immediately after George Floyd. I still remember myself and many people in my role were helping institutions to put out solidarity messages and so on. But the big question was, yeah, you can put out this message, but please, can you just tell me what is the evidence that you're making any impact, that there is a change in your organization? Maybe let's start with something as simple as, can you just post the image of your senior team and let's see where we are? And I thought the world had reached a point where we were beginning to really feel it, because George Floyd stared in your face. You had no way to go because the world was in a global health crisis, and you were forced to do one thing, and that was to check your television to see who else was dying next to you. So we were forced to see our world in crumbling, the reality of the world, that if you looked like me and you were from a particular background, that not only were you experiencing these obvious issues, but if you were, the pandemic struck, you were at risk, and you were going to die a lot quicker, and more of you were going to die as compared to your counterparts in the world. So it looked to me as though there was this collective humility that faced humanity, and everybody sat there thinking, "Oh my God, well, we better be nice because any of us can die any minute." And blah blah blah. And then the Euro 2020.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, what happened to our world? The same people who sent those tweets to the 3 black guys who missed the penalty would have been staring at their screen saying, "Oh, this can't happen. This cannot happen. We cannot see murder," and brought their light on the streets of Minneapolis. So I guess I'm saying that to say, I like the hype. We've seen some beginnings of what could be, if sustained, could be very positive. But the unfortunate situation that I have is I'm already beginning to see organizations falling back and just being performative in the work that they're doing around this agenda. The bandwagon, everybody wants to recruit a senior leader, an academic, Pro Vice-Chancellor, and so on, Chief Diversity Officer, you name it. But the question for me is, what's the reality? How embedded is that action? Are we just performing for the camera? And most times I'm thinking we are. I mean, I just listened to a case in Northwest where this higher professional in the NHS community has just won a big racism case. I'm thinking, for goodness sake, I mean, what's really going on in our world?
Interesting. I guess the question then becomes, where do we go from here? But be more specific in terms of the higher education space, because that's where you are.
Well,
what do you think should be the direction going forward? Yeah, we've acknowledged 2020 onwards that, you know, the UK has a work to do. Yes, maybe the state of the UK is not necessarily to be compared to America because the context is different, but in the UK and specifically in the higher education space, where do you think we ought to move from here?
I think the first thing for us is to have a genuine acknowledgement and acceptance of the problem. In 2020, I was beginning to feel that institutions were in that place, but with time, thinking that we need to really rethink that organizational diagnosis, the acceptance of the problem beyond the photo opportunity type stuff. So that bit about acknowledging and accepting and getting that organizational diagnosis and getting a buy-in from everybody to see the felt need for that change. I think for me, that's one. The next thing is the acceptance that the reason why we failed is that certain individuals have gotten into rooms and create things that do not necessarily speak to the lived experience of those who are experiencing the minoritization. And that the way forward, if we want to avoid this deficit mentality, so we still set up programs which assumes that it's about, let's fix the individuals. If we fix them hard enough, suddenly everything will work. Let's get out of that space and start thinking, how do we co-create the solution? How do we work with the minoritized groups to really create the way forward? How do we promote positions or climate of contestation where we allow all voices to thrive, but have a framework of working through those thriving voices? I think that there is this falsification that we'll all sit together and we'll all agree, because in the midst of it, there are people who also benefit from the marginalization of particular groups, and those voices will all come together. Do we have a framework in our institutions to manage that contestation so we allow the co-creation to bring multiple voices? The other thing is, how do we really promote this environment, a climate that allow people to disagree but not disengage? So there are people who are going to say, well, I'm not really happy with the way you're designing your anti-racism program, and let's work together. There's one way that you can keep them involved, understanding that we're not going to buy everything that they're asking for. However, we're going to keep them informed and involved. We're not going to lead to disengagement, because what that does for me is that negativity and the energy around that negativity distracts. And then it takes us off the agenda. And then we have, every time we're trying to do the distraction, then makes it so complex that we look for alternative things to do, because this is too difficult for us to face. So how do we, and this might just be utopia, it might not work. I think for me, my experience doing this for a very, very long time, and I didn't tell you for how long, is that we will get to a point where it's easier to get people around to talk about and contest this agenda. I think we need to get away from the falsification that freedom of speech is about a group and not the other group. What makes us in HE think that issues around race equality charter centering minoritized voices is not part of the freedom of speech movement? So how can we package things in such a way that we all have a stake and we co-create together? The other thing I would really be pushing institutions to do is, at the moment, the language of inclusion for me is very diluting, dilutes stuff. How do I get people to start thinking you could be inclusive, but you cannot be inclusive until you've worked on specific agendas that are still experiencing abject marginalization? So in effect, the theme, the harmonization agenda, the inclusion is fantastic, but we also need to look at pockets of marginalization that prevents that harmonization or inclusive approach. So I say to people, I think in most cases, diversity is with us. It's real. In my university, a large percentage of our students are from an ethnic diversity background. So you cannot tell me that you want to create that diversity. No matter how you're trying to do your social engineering, it's really difficult to do anything, because the very location, Bradford, the population, Bradford, and the current economic challenges mean that children will be traveling from nearer home because it's a lot cheaper to do it that way. And therefore, we will always have that diversity. So that mix of people is presented to us. Sometimes we don't have a great deal of control over it. what we need to be intentional about is how we make
Indeed.
that diversity work. How do we actually make that mix work? So that then becomes a place where institutions are saying, okay, I've got my very simple stages of engaging with diversity. First one is you create it. Sometimes it just happens, like the example I've given you, you
Yep.
create it. The next bit is putting things in place intentionally to make that diversity work. And that's your harnessing
Yep.
that your diversity using inclusive practice. But the next level is where you actually make that diversity count. That's the leveraging, is the bit which says, stop doing this monitoring if you're not going to use it for anything. Stop boasting about how diverse your leadership team is if you're not going to even get your diverse leaders to be your brokers of culture or cultural, providing cultural solutions. So it's that next level of leveraging. And then the last bit is it's so much part of what we do that it just drives everything. I'm now sitting in meetings, not just in my institution, asking others, did you consider diversity as the first, or inclusion as the first approach to this issue, rather than you've done everything and then you think, oh, what are we missing? Why don't you start by saying, okay, so we are recruiting into X, and who's been missing? Let's start with them. How do we bring these people who've been missing from this particular part of our business? How do we bring them first in? And then we think about the other people who would come, whatever. So is that mainstreaming? Is that EDI being the DNA of the organization? So if you see that stage, it's like, for me, a journey. You create, you make it work, and then you make it work again, and then it becomes the way you do things. But you don't sit on your laurels, because these things will happen and change all the time. So you go through that cycle, and you keep going through that cycle in different parts of your business about creating the diversity, harnessing that diversity, making that diversity count, and then it becomes the way we do things, and everybody can see it. We all feel we belong. And I think for me, it's about how we return to some of the notions of belonging. People will not contribute if they don't think that place is for them. We see this in our everyday life. You run a family. If one of the kids feel that they are not as loved by the parents as others, they don't feel they are part of what's going on, you can see the child, trying to look for things away from that family. And this is what happens in our workplaces. People come in, and in order to thrive, they want to make sure that they are part of and parcel of what happens. So you start seeing people trying to find out, can I wear my everyday clothes? Can I turn up in my workplace dressed as the African that I am? And I mean, many people have asked me, I don't feel cold in the UK again, because my mode of dressing is just my African fabric at any time of the year. And I feel that I can walk in being myself. So how many people feel in that way? How many people actually come to work leaving the very thing that make them tick, simply because they don't think that the workplace is going to manage that totality of a person that they are.
On that question, though, in terms of how we present in the workplace, that's an interesting one, because when I look at sort of your social media presence and how you appear online and in public, I see just being anti-Udy, as is authentically anti-Udy. Do you know what I mean? But my question is, were you always like that? Because I feel like for me personally, I haven't reached 30 yet, but in the short years that I've lived, I've gone into workplaces and I've changed my hair. I'll blow dry, make sure it sits well. The auntie will say, pack your hair well. And I've slicked it back. I've tried to dress in a particular way that I feel like is appropriate. So I'd be viewed as a professional, I'd be viewed as respectable. And I feel like that's something that I've been very hyper aware of how I present in the workplace, so much so that being a teacher in the classroom, I found myself policing my tone. So even my husband would say, why do you talk like that when you're at work or when you're on the phone to a colleague? Like, why does your tone change? Why do you start sounding soft? And then, I come out of the workplace and then I'm finding myself again and I'm speaking with my natural, tone. My question is, ultimately, have you always been that way where you were able to present authentically without having to police yourself, without having to change or adapt? Or is that a journey that you've been on?
I personally think that it's been a journey. I think like you, when it all started, it was always trying to find out if I do this, who's gonna be unhappy about it and so forth. So I think over time, I think this is the advantage of being in the system for a little longer. And I've
Yeah.
learned that authenticity is the only thing that can save me. Why would I, for any reason, spend all my life being a carbon copy of somebody else when I know I can be myself? And that's what I say all the time. I still remember when I got my chair, I got my professorship in 2004. I used to have a colleague who sadly died. But I remember this colleague waiting for my appointment has been announced. Udy is now a professor. And my first day coming into work as a professor, she was just sitting in the office waiting for me to arrive. And then I arrived, she screamed. And I thought, why are you screaming? And she didn't say anything until the following day. We went to a meeting in Manchester. I dressed in my usual way. And she said, oh, thank you so much for being yourself. And I know that being a professor doesn't change it. It doesn't change you. Because see, I've never told you this. It's when you wear your warm African jackets, it just makes me enjoy the work that I do in a different way. And it gives me the assurance that I can be myself. And then suddenly you turned up as a professor, you're still dressing as yourself. So I said to her, listen, it's taken me a long time to stop policing myself. I remember when I went for a job. I wanted to change, and I went to another institution for an interview just before my promotion. And I spoke to 3 people. I spoke to a white male mentor. I spoke to a white female mentor and a black female mentor. And the white male mentor said, be yourself. The white female mentor said, well, if you had to do anything, maybe you could just go with less vibrant colors. Well, I'm not saying gray, but maybe what you wear for the interview could be a little subtler. And then my black female mentor said, Udy, take off your nail polish. Make sure that you are in either gray or navy or black. And I still remember thinking, I can see that was herself also trying to please, because she's been there. She's seen rejection on the basis of people just defining who you will be by the way you dress, by the way you talk. And I still remember my response was, well, if I lie to get into this role, or lie to get in this job, what will happen when I get into that institution? And I think that's what many people are saying when they challenge anonymous recruitment. People are saying, you can't tell me to hide who I am to come in, and then you lie to me that when I come in, you allow me to be myself. So I suspect that there's something there about how you're maturing into it, and how you also build your own confidence to be able to present that in a way that doesn't leave you feeling guilty afterwards. Because that was the other thing about, yes, you are authentic, but you come back home and start thinking, oh my God, what have I just done today? Should I have dressed in black for that interview, and so on? So how do you build your own confidence to the extent that you're proud of that authenticity? It's not imposed on you by, I just want to try the world, but it's real. I mean, I cannot tell you, my colleagues at work, if I turn up in nothing like this, they might just think, are you well? You're just going to see your GP.
What's the matter?
So it's about it takes time to develop it, but there's a lot of things about how do I build my confidence to make sure that presenting my authentic self doesn't come to hurt me when nobody else is around me.
Yeah, that's it. And I think for me, what I'm seeing also is the need for representation. So if we have more anti-Professor Udys that can model what it looks like to be authentic, so you're breaking barriers, you're paving the way. Someone like myself who is a lifetime behind in terms of my academic career journey, I'm looking ahead and I'm thinking, okay, so I can too present as the Zimbabwean British girl that I am without feeling a need to match any kind of aesthetic in order to blend in and, allegedly, succeed. So thank you first and foremost for representing and being a role model in that area.
I think there's something also that we take for granted most of the time.
Yeah.
My non-African friends really complement what I wear and how I wear them, to the extent that sometimes if I travel with any of them into Africa, we need to take a little time out so I can take them and show them a few things. And they love it. They are not getting into this falseness around acculturation, and it's just that they love that authenticity, and they like the representation to the extent that they also want to mirror it in some ways. And it's how we can also support them to mirror it without feeling guilty that they may be getting into one of these notions of appropriation that sometimes keeps colleagues wondering, should I wear that or shouldn't I wear that? I just believe very strongly that we have come to complicate our world and we shouldn't.
I agree. But focusing more on your career journey, I guess my question is, are you the first in your family, in your community to step into the higher education space and pursue a career in that? And how has that journey been for you?
Yeah, I mean, when you said that, I just looked back. I think I am the first, to be quite honest. But it's been a journey that is very exciting for me, because I keep saying to people, I am who I am today because my mom made it happen. And mom was a nurse. And I remember my mom saying, to become the matron that I finally became, it took me so many different kinds of U-turns and different kinds of journey, because I didn't go through my nursing as a graduate. In our days, you have your standard 6, and then you go to college of this, and you go to this, and then finally you grow to become a senior nurse. And she wanted me, she wanted one of her children to follow her footsteps, and I happened to be that one person. And I have seen throughout in my family where there has been that sacrifice, and taking a village to raise a child has been real in my family. My dad died when I was very, very young. I was 2 years old, and my mom's siblings, a brother in particular, was the first person who started giving me scholarship, and then I got on the government scholarship to be where I am. When I look back now, I think that the contribution and the support from the total family architecture to support me was the big part of where we are now as a family, where I can now see many of my cousin siblings going into HE, supporting their kids to get in there. But I think when I look back, I'm still, if I'm not mistaken, the only one in our extended family in higher education.
Wow. Okay. Amazing. But thinking back then, what has been a highlight of your career and one of the greatest challenges of your career, if you can compare and contrast those?
I think the highlight of my career has been being able to bring in my early part of like the health career that I went into, and to bring it into the subject that I live by and I live for. So I started as a nurse. After my first degree, I made a first class. And one of the things that happened was then the Nigerian government stepped in and said, oh, we'll give you scholarship to go and study in any university of your choice abroad.
Wow.
So I came into England and did my PhD under a nursing author that I used to read about. And when I went to British Council in Enugu, I remember the first thing I did was just thinking, where do I go? Where do I? And there was nobody to ask the question. So I was the first person that made a first class in a new Faculty of Health Sciences in Enugu at the time. And so there was nobody to ask, what do I do with this first class? The university just says, if you made a first class in the circumstances that you did, we are going to send you somewhere, you go and choose. So I went to British Council. I'm thinking, what would be the yardstick for defining where I go and what I do? And I quickly thought, oh, what about just thinking about some authors? That's randomly, I don't know where that came from. I just thought, okay, so yeah, Margaret Clark has written a book on foundations of nursing. And that's the book that I used throughout my first year, second year. All my big nursing foundation modules were based on this textbook. So I went and I just said, do you have a university where Professor Margaret, I didn't even know if she was a professor or whether she was. So that was a question I put to the person at the British Council. I think it was like the collection area. They help you to search universities. And she said, oh, we found someone. Yeah, she's the writer of the book Foundation of Nursing. Yeah, is that the person? Yeah. Well, she's based at home. Wow, that's where I want to go. That was how I chose my university to do my PhD under Margaret Clark. But that was more like a generic, you thinking about health and how you take your nursing diploma into degree, into PhD. But it soon became apparent that I needed to anchor it around a theme. And that theme for me was how do you amplify voices of marginalized groups? So mine was really looking at something that was really precious to us in Nigeria, the family, the extended family, and how do you amplify the voices of family members so that they are real participant in healthcare delivery. They are real multidisciplinary team members. It wasn't just what you read in books, they were real. So I was able to start at that time to link my health career, health education career to the diversity discipline through my PhD. And since then, it has really helped me to try and focus my work around voice magnification, around deminoritizing people, and centering often undermined voices.
Powerful.
So for me, that's the highlight, the ability to try and consolidate my work in that. So I sit here a proud healthcare professional. Not give anything. It's, that's the big thing. But it's even better that I'm able to try and pull the things around health into the notion of how do you empower voiceless people? How do you ensure that you're able to amplify people's voices so that they can contribute to anything that concerns them, which for me just embodies social justice. It's a big thing around inclusion. And I talk about the next level for me, which is the transformational diversity. How through doing this, you can actually transform lives, and those lives can then transform organizations through the way you actually center quiet voices.
What about a challenge then? So that's the highlight of your career. Along the way, what has been maybe a struggle that you've had to overcome?
I think for me, it's been this notion of always being in a position of I don't use the word isolation because I don't think it's that. when you find yourself the person who is first in, being the first in. So many people see it as trailblazing. I don't see it as such because it comes with a lot of sacrifice.
Oh, yes.
And that sacrifice is about, like you said, policing yourself to be the person that talks to different perspectives. Because in that position that you're trailblazing, you're setting the tone, you're also thinking about, if I played wrong, I'm just going to mess it up for everybody else.
Yep.
But in that, you're also saying, if I played wrong, they will not let anybody else like me into the room. So you find yourself customizing, adapting, but trying to stay authentic in the midst of that. For me, has been a key challenge. Is how do I walk into that room knowing that people will be hearing a voice like mine, ideas from me and people like me, maybe for the first time, and therefore ensuring that you're not selling out, as well as you're not confrontational, as well as you are representing, but also understanding that you're not able to represent every views in that journey.
Absolutely.
So for me, that's been how do you balance all that? Because you can play it so wrong that nobody else wants to bring anybody that looks like you into the boardroom because they think, oh, she'll just come here and not know how to behave. But in the midst of that, you want to stay authentic. Because as soon as you lose that authenticity and you dilute the kind of brand that goes into these traditional spaces. So you're the non-traditional going to traditional spaces, wanting to remain authentic, but also adapting. So it's how do you manage that dynamics and how do you navigate?
Yeah, indeed. It's a whole lot of pressure. It's a lot of weight to carry. And I think it takes a degree of character strength to navigate and not to lose oneself in the process. I think one would describe someone like you a disruptor, Auntie Udy, because you're going there and you're going in there and you're changing the game. You're disrupting things how they've been traditionally done, and you're saying let's do this way. So it's not just the fact that you're different; it's that you're also advocating change and you're telling people to rethink the way that they've done something for so long. So I think being different and being a disruptor at the same time carries a lot of pressure on both ends. But as I say, character strength, really. I guess to wrap this up then, my last and final question is, for the person that, like me, is following in your footsteps and pursuing a career within that higher education space or across the education sector, Black women specifically, what would your advice be to them?
Stay focused. And I don't say that lightly because there are so many things that can distract you if you allow that to be the case. And so what I say to people is, what do you want? And how do you get it? What are the specifics and the generics that you need to do to get? So that's the focus bit. Because otherwise, what will happen is you get distracted, you lose focus, and then some of the things that set in around your well-being, and then I think it allows your spirit to wane. And once that happens, little things that you could be resilient over will then stick. Any little thing, because the things that I call little, and I choose those battles every day. I'm having to decide, is that something I want to run after? No, it's going to take me off my focus. So I then, and then the next day I'm thinking, maybe in that very situation, I did run after it because it was going to distract. But in this situation, I'm going to run after it because we need to run after it. And I've had to do that. So it's about focus. And then the other thing, I do this lecture a lot about how have I navigated this and become a resilient leader. So I have a few tips. The first one is staying focused. The next one for me is please accept support, because to support others, you must learn to be supported. Sometimes we feel that we are enough. We are self-starting and self-sufficient. You've been in a position where you're the underrepresented and you're fighting, and therefore it's so easy to keep doing that. Now, the danger is that because you haven't learned how to sit under somebody else's support, how to gain support, it's difficult for you to then chart a program of support for others. So is that positionality where you are able to draw down support in order to learn how to, and then you give to others. So if you find yourself in that place where you can gain support and then you provide support, it's a good place to be. But
Indeed.
there is something that you need to do, though. You must find a way of replenishing your own energy. Sometimes that might mean actually saying, sorry, I can't support you just yet. Give me another few months. So you're not just taking on every mentoring that is meant to be taken on, because there's so few of you that you're able to tell when it's getting a bit tough and you just need to stop, self-preserve, and back out. Because I get reminded every time I fly a lot, I have never heard anybody who says when the mask drop, pick it and put on the other person first. Never. What you hear is when the mask drop, put it on yourself first so that you have the energy to put it on somebody else. And so for me, it's that big bit about just being in a place to replenish, to support. And that means you have to self-care. And lastly, more importantly, please, there is no belief that should be fixed for life. There's got to be the audit of personal belief on a regular basis, because these things do change. My belief about certain things have changed over time. The things that I believed in a woman used to do before I had kids, the things that I believed an African in England had to do before my kids joined me, they're all different now. My belief about how you balance life and family is so different now. You have to put yourself in a place for that personal audit of your beliefs and being honest to yourself to say, things have changed and therefore I have to change my own beliefs in this way. And to do this, I need this support. And please, please, please get yourself somebody else. Let somebody else talk to your life. I think I've given everything that I've always balanced in me just so that I can help other people. But I think it's important to do a few of those things. Keep focus.
I love that.
Replenish your energy. Gain support to be able to support. And then gather yourself people that will check and give you that check and balance and accountability. And that's when having that mentor is so crucial.
Amen. I agree. Thank you so much. You heard it, ladies. Stay focused, stay replenished, stay supported, and self-audit. I need to stay on that one, the self-audit, and accepting that, my views do change and I do struggle with, should I accept that my view has changed? Does that make me look I don't know, does it make me look like I'm wavering in my convictions if I say that actually I don't agree with that anymore? But it's okay to evolve in our thinking. Thank you for that. But yeah, that's it for today. Thank you so much, Auntie Udy Professor Archibong. We really, really thank you for giving us your time and sharing your journey. And I do believe that it's a blessing for Black women across the UK to see people like you breaking barriers, paving the way and really setting the standard there. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me, Chiedza.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. To make sure you don't miss the next one or the one after that, ensure to follow us on all podcast platforms and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.